Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. This will be a live session where I cover my seller financing pitch. And I'm going to go for a few minutes, give a chance for some questions to be put into the chat, and then I'm going to try to answer every question that comes my way. Should be a nice short live stream. If this is your first time to my channel, my goal is to teach the average person that you can reach financial freedom in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position, which I wasn't, and I did, and you will. When you're buying rental properties, we usually only have the option of getting up to 10 mortgages in our name if we're using residential lending, so 4 units or less. So when you get to 10, you start having to use commercial loans, portfolio loans, or lending that is, usually a bit worse. It has higher interest rates. It's harder to get 30-year fixed rate debt. So using as many residential loans in your name as you can help an investor get started. So far, that's the only kind of loans that I have. I have 7 properties, 6 mortgages. They're all residential loans. They're all 30-year fixed rate debt. I'm starting to make a seller financing pitch with every offer that I make. There's a few benefits as a buyer for seller financing. One, it doesn't take up one of your 10 loans that you can have in your name. 2, it can have a smaller down payment. 3, your debt to income ratio and your credit score may not matter as much to the seller as it will to a lender like a bank or a credit union or a mortgage company. So pitching seller financing to the seller is kind of hard. There are some agents who think it's illegal, which is ridiculous because it's a contract, just like the one you have with a lender, except the seller is carrying the note instead of the bank. And there are several benefits to a seller. So when I send my email to my agent to make the seller financing pitch, I pretty much want to list out the benefits to the seller and point out why it's in their best interest. Because if you can get them to agree to it, and these are not where I'm going and finding off-market deals and doing driving for dollars and going to the county court record house to find divorces and looking up who owns property and finding a person who just wants to get rid of their house. I'm making these offers on MLS properties. The first time I did this was only like a month or 2 ago, and I kind of got the idea after talking with Matt, the lumberjack landlord, and Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. They do these kind of things all the time. So I'm incorporating it into my strategy. And so I've used this once and they accepted. So 100% success rate. That's going to go down with every offer that I make. I guarantee it. So here are the basics of what I want my agent, because I'm still using an agent, even though I'm doing seller financing. It is my goal to help my agent make a bunch of money, because the more money they make, the more likely they are to bring me deals in the future. The start of the email is, are you open to seller financing? And you can find different ways of saying it. Are you open to carrying the note instead of me using traditional lending, or however you want to put the language that makes the most sense to you? I put in there, I would like to help you avoid a large capital gains hit. Getting all of that money at once can cost you a lot in taxes. Some people haven't realized how much money they're going to have to pay in taxes, and some people are trying, or they realized it, and they're trying to find a way to not. So there's 1031 exchange. There's several reasons why that large capital gains tax hit is probably one of the reasons why people aren't selling. So if you make the offer if you carry the note, you're not going to have all of that money coming in at once. So you're not going to have a large capital gains tax hit. The next line is, if you are open to it, there is a way for you to keep getting monthly income and not have to manage a property or deal with tenants. That all becomes my problem. So I'm letting them know they're going to consistently get monthly income, which is sometimes the goal. Somebody who's trying to leave real estate still wants that income, especially if they've been an investor and they're in their late 60s or 70s and they're trying to step out of the management role. Even managing a property manager can be more effort than they're looking to do. So pointing out that all of the problems of taking care of the tenants and the property becomes mine, but they still get the consistent monthly income. I then say, also, I would prefer to pay interest to you instead of a bank. I think you may like getting interest payments on top of the sales price. I don't offer a higher interest rate. Some of the people that I've listened to or done the research on for seller financing offers say that you offer a higher interest rate than you're going to pay the bank because it's going to get their attention. they haven't really been watching what interest rates the banks get, so that doesn't matter. But pointing out that I would prefer to pay interest to you instead of the bank puts it in their mind that they're also going to earn interest on top of the sales price of the house. If the seller is looking to make consistent income, one of their fears might be that you do seller financing to buy the property. So you don't have the money to put the down payment, so you buy it with a low down payment and you get the good interest rate, you can do 30-year fixed rate debt. Some people do a balloon payment or whatever. I'm offering 30-year fixed rate. They just carry the note. So I put in my email that I'm willing to put a $20,000 early prepayment penalty because the seller's fear, if their agent warns them, could be that I buy it with seller financing and then I go finance the house because I've got it locked down to where I'm now in control of being able to get that loan or not. So then they get that big capital gains hit anyways. So alleviating that fear in advance by putting it in the email that I would be willing to give you an extra $20,000 if I refinanced in those 5 years, or if I sold in those 5 years, you're basically going to get all this money all at once. So that kind of takes that fear off the table, letting the seller know that my motivation is to get the loan with them and keep it there. Once the sales go through, I like to point out to the seller that they own a note. Most people don't know what a note is, but it is a currency. That note has value, and there is an entire secondary market of notes. They actually have conventions, and people buy and sell them all the time. Most times, your bank gives you a mortgage on your property, and then they sell that note to somebody else. Sometimes your bank will still collect the rent payment or the mortgage payments and pass it on to the person who owns the note. They become it's not the carrier. There's a more professional term that you can insert there, where they say, they're no longer owning your mortgage. I think the one time so far in all the mortgages that I've had, a lender kept the mortgage for about 3 months before they sold it. Usually, I use Fairway Mortgage, and they've sold it before my first mortgage payment. Um, your seller can do the same thing. You buy the house, they carry the note. So if they want that consistent income, they can just sit on that note and get the monthly payments every month. If they need the money, they can sell the note. It's a real thing. Letting them know that can actually help them make the decision to go with seller financing. And then I say, I'm willing to have a call if you have any questions, because sometimes they might not understand. And getting a phone call, it gets you one step closer to getting that property under contract. And then at the end of my seller financing pitch, I will put, I'm also willing to buy the property with regular bank financing, but that sometimes takes longer with the appraisal rules. Either way works for me. Do you have a preference? And end with a question mark. So I'm not giving them an option of saying yes or no to selling the house. I'm giving them an option to say, I prefer seller financing or traditional lending. So the answer is yes, either way, whichever one they pick. I mentioned the appraisal rules because on seller financing, it's not a requirement to have an appraisal. I would still have an inspection period in my actual offer, which is one of the reasons why I use an agent, because they've got all the paperwork to get that done right, to put in the inspection clause and the duration of the inspection. So that's basically a seller financing pitch. I would include things like the price of the property, the earnest money, the amount that I'm going to put down, the specifics to the deal that you're trying to make. The down payment can change based on what the seller's needs are. Sometimes they will have a mortgage on the property, and so your down payment needs to pay off that mortgage if there's not much left, or you might need to take out a mortgage, like a regular mortgage, to pay that one off, and then the seller can carry the rest of the balance. One of the things that's a little bit tricky is I am using an agent, and if I find the property on the MLS, more than likely the seller is also using an agent, or they're the agent, but they're usually using an agent too. So there's going to be 6% of the purchase value is going to go out into agent fees. So my down payment includes enough money to where the seller is going to be able to pay the 6% agent fees and pay off any mortgages that they have and walk away with the amount of money that they need to sell the property. They shouldn't have to sell the property and then have the expense of paying the agent fees. So that might make your down payment a little bit larger, but it still can be a lot less than coming up with the full 20 or 25% that a traditional lender might want you to have. So if there's any more questions on seller financing, you can bring them up as you go along. Before I get into your comments and questions, I would like to point out that in the last 2 weeks, I have used the binder strategy 3 times. All 3 times were successful. Each tenant requested for the rent to go up. The smallest rent increase was $200. The other one was $250, and the other one on top of that was $310. So because I took 5 minutes to make the binder, sent a text to say, hey, can we meet and talk about renewing your lease? These are existing tenants. These aren't newly purchased properties. My cash flow is going to increase. That's too much math. $450, $800 or so a month, because I had a 10-minute conversation with them. The tenants are happy. I don't have tenant turnover. My cash flow increases and kind of catches up too. Part of this strategy is to keep up with added expenses. Taxes go up, insurance goes up, cost of maintenance goes up because the wages are going up. So handyman costs more, contractors cost more. So the binder strategy is a way to get tenants to increase their rent at their request and be happy about it. So I don't have to deal with tenant turnover, and happy tenants don't trash the place. And the tenants are happy because they got to be involved in the conversation of setting their rents, because that's not something that a lot of people normally get to do. It's effective. It's still working. So I'm going to scroll up to the top of the comments, and I want to say thanks for everybody taking the time to hang out with us tonight. I'm going to try to do these every Tuesday. Today was my last day in the 10-week Bigger Pockets Bootcamp, where I'm a teaching assistant on Tuesdays. So now I've got the Monday night one. So now Tuesdays I'll be able to do this, and I'm probably going to start it a little bit earlier so that people on the East Coast don't have to stay up until 9 o'clock at night. I'm probably going to try to start them at 4 o'clock Pacific. That gives people on the East Coast a chance to jump in, and people on the West Coast, if you're listening on your way home in your car, or you might jump in a little bit late if you're still at work. But we're going to work together to make that work optional, so you won't always have to do that. Let me start here at the top. Chester, good evening. Howdy. PJ, howdy. Tiffany, howdy. WT, hi. Chester, leverage is using other people's money to further your interests. That's a good way of putting it. And in this case, you're leveraging the seller's money that you're going to pay back to them with interest. Benefits both sides. Hi, Alex. Cedric, hi, Dion. Would you consider paying off a mortgage? I have paid off a mortgage. Several years ago, large lenders would limit people to 4 mortgages. After the 2008 housing crash, there was some, lending fears. So I had heard from several people, and a lot of people hear this still, that you're allowed to go up to 4 mortgages in your own name. In reality, it's 10, right? But there was a period of time where it was 4. So I got to 4. I had a single family house and 3 duplexes. I focused and paid off the single family house. And my goal was to then find the next investment property, which I did. It was a 4-plex, and I added that. So then I was back up to 4 mortgages. 2 things changed. Almost every single lender went back up to Fannie and Freddie loans. You can have 10 in your name. So I stopped hearing 4 was the limit, and interest rates dropped. My last loan was 6%, and all of a sudden they dropped down to 3.1, 3.3. So it doesn't make sense to pay them off when they're that low. So I have a paid off house. I have 6 mortgages with 7 properties. And because of some peer pressure and intelligence, I'm looking at doing a cash out refinance on my single family house to take out 50% loan to value. So I get a good interest rate. I still have a good equity position, and I'll take that money out and put it to work because I've saved up money for a down payment. And if I add that to the money that I pull out of that house, my goal, which I'm making public, is that my next property is a 4-plex worth more than $1 million. Because something I say constantly, and I put my money where my mouth is I wish my properties cost more, as long as the return scaled. Michael Zuber says it often, you can go broke buying cheap. And I tried to buy cheap for years. And then I realized in the last couple of years that I buy more expensive properties, the return, even if it's the same return, 10%, that's bigger on a bigger property. So my goal now is to spend at least $1 million on the next property, which it's going to take a big down payment to do. So it's my savings plus the cash out. So I'm going to be recycling capital, which is how the lumberjack landlord got to 90-ish units, and Michael Zuber got to over 180 units, and I'm sitting here at 16. So ways to go. Chester, are you familiar with Pace Morby and his wife Laura? Yes, Pace does some Bigger Pockets podcast on sub-2 deals. Michael does one of his weekly interviews. Yeah, Laura's on Sundays. He interviews Laura on Sundays, and Pace was just on Bigger Pockets like think it went Chandler, David Smith, and then Pace Morby, or one or the other. Both great episodes. Episodes I'm probably going to watch 2 or 3 times to kind of get the notes down and kind of get the information to where it's more subconscious, so I just have the knowledge without having to think about it. Good strategies, yeah. Angel, how often do you do upgrades to your properties? When I buy them, I put in motion sensor LED lights on the exterior, and I put in coded locks so that tenants don't have keys. None of my tenants have keys. They all have coded locks. Um, upgrades. I I will turn a den or a family room into a bedroom. So I've done that. I have a unit where there's a young couple there with kids, and so I'm not messing it with it while they live there. But if they ever move out, there's a den. It already has a source of heat, 2 ways in and out, and a closet. And I will add one wall with a door. So I'm going to spend probably 5 grand putting a wall and electricity, maybe a light if there isn't one there in that room already. So I'll do those kind of upgrades. All my properties are Class C. So the countertops are original, and they probably, um, if they break, I would fix them. If I was in B or A, I guess it would depend on the market. My properties are clean, safe, and functional. I don't go for high-end appliances. I don't go for granite or anything like that. Um, I have one property I'm going to try out this new not laminate. It's where you use epoxy to do the new countertop. So that'll be kind of an experiment when I do that. But it probably won't happen until a tenant turnover happens because it is clean, safe, and functional. I find that in Class C neighborhoods, upgrades like that don't really change the rent much. So if there's no return, and the things that I'm looking for that have already helped limit tenant turnover, like side by side units and a garage and 2 bedrooms, so there's space for stuff. I allow pets, so there's not a lot of tenant turnover. I haven't had to do a lot of upgrades to do that in the properties. Marco Polo, must be Tuesday. It is Tuesday. Thank you for the last year. Were great, Chester. And this moved. Cedric, it depends. Could you make more in interest income on the amount outstanding than you would by not having access to that capital with a free and clear asset? Yeah, so there's a consideration on, I'm always trying to get a 10% or better cash on cash return year one. And then it does scale up. My overall average across my portfolio is about a 16% cash on cash return, because the next year the rents go up, the next year and the next year the rents go up. Mortgages pretty much stay the same. Some small expenses change, like insurance and that kind of stuff. But I have a terrible cash on equity position. So that paid off house is worth twice what I paid for it. So I'm getting a good cash on cash return. But when I put that equity to work somewhere else, that return will scale and be much larger. Marco, I'm reading Zuber's new book. It's great too. Thanks. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that Audible. I have to figure out what format Amazon wants it recorded in. I use a Mac computer. I have a gaming PC, so if it had to be PC, it could be either way. But I don't know how that works, so it's going to take some research. Port City Trading. 7-unit being sold for 450, 20% down payment, 90K. I only have 50K. How do I get the other 40K? What would you do? So is possible to get the seller to carry the 40,000 on a separate note? So that sometimes they can do that. With 7-unit, you're not going to qualify for residential lending, so it's going to be a commercial loan. Do you have retirement accounts you can borrow against, or like I did, empty out to put the money to work better in a property? Partnerships are always an option. Might not always be the best one, but 50% of a great deal is better than 100% of no deal. Per Brandon Turner, of course. That would be some of the ways I would look at that. Maybe friends or family money, private money, or possibly hard money. Making sure that your debt to income ratio matches and that the lenders you're working with are aware of where you're getting the money from, so they can include those payments into your debt to income, so you don't get caught at trying to do some kind of fraud or something. Chester Williams, subject 2, yes, sub 2. Bradley Perico, hi, I would. Would you buy a fourplex for your first property ever? Do you think saving account of 50,000 is enough to start in real estate investing. I do think 50,000 is enough. I started with 20. But with that 20, I was able to do duplex. I didn't have quite enough for the down payment on a fourplex. Matt, the lumberjack landlord, has a great strategy that he calls 4-3-2-1. If you use FHA loans to buy 4 units or less, you can do it with as little as 3.5% down, right? If you're buying single family houses, conventional might be better because it's only 3% down. But as soon as you go to small multifamily, a lot of lenders are requiring more down. So it becomes pretty expensive, especially on a fourplex. But if you're using FHA doesn't like you to go from a house to a duplex because that's from a residence to an investment style property. But they will let you buy properties as long as you are either moving a certain distance because of work, so you can buy another house with FHA, or moving closer to a single family or to a larger single family. So if you buy a fourplex with an FHA, the next one can be a triplex, and the next one can be a duplex, and the next one can be a house. And the next one, all of these with FHA, the next one can be a larger house that has an extra bedroom or something. If you start with a duplex, FHA might not let you go to a triplex or a fourplex. So you might have to go conventional. But after your third or fourth property, you should have cash flow from each property. The income snowball will kick in and you'll start saving the down payment sooner. So it's a lot easier. FHA or conventional with 50,000 down, or 50,000 to work with, I would recommend house hacking. So you can use a low money down payment. Instead, if you can't find the fourplex that makes sense with FHA and you want to use conventional loans, you can buy a house with an ADU, so an auxiliary dwelling unit. Some people will call this a granny flat or a mother-in-law house, but 2 houses on one property, the numbers work just like a duplex. But the really interesting thing is, even though there's 2 structures and 2 units, a house with an ADU is a single family house. So if you haven't owned a house for the last 3 years, you can purchase that with a 3% down conventional loan. I have a video on my channel. And my brain just shut off. I have a video on my channel that talks about the difference between FHA loans and conventional loans, and it can kind of give you all of the, which one would make more sense to you. But if you're using a house with an ADU, then your conventional loan is probably the best way to go, because even though there's 2 units, it's still only 3% down. If you already own a house and you're using conventional to owner occupy it, it's still only 5% down. And the real benefit to conventional over FHA is FHA has PMI, primary mortgage insurance, or whatever the PMI means, but it's insurance on your mortgage for the lender, not for you. FHA, that stays forever until you refinance or pay off the mortgage. With conventional, if you put down less than 20%, you're going to get PMI. As soon as you get to 22%, the PMI drops off. And it says automatically, but I would check with your lender and make sure that it's going to happen. So 50,000 is enough because that gives you your down payment, because you're going to have down payment, closing costs, and money for immediate repairs, right? And reserves. The lenders are going to want you to at least have 3 months worth of mortgage payments. So as your portfolio grows, that reserves account needs to grow, because you have to have enough to cover all of your mortgages for 3 months. Some lenders say you need to keep a reserve of 4% of your gross value of your properties. So it depends on the lender you're working with. Chester, Port City sounds like a creative financing opportunity. Harry Hunter, question. Do you think they'll be successful in eliminating use of self-directed retirement money in purchasing rentals? From what I heard, that was dismissed. And it seems like some people are kind of targeting that retirement accounts to generate more tax income to cover the money that we're spending on stimulus and CARES Act and all of that. So I think it could go away in the future. And when it does, if this was approved now, they were giving it a 2-year timeline, where if you have money that, if you have properties that are being controlled by a self-directed IRA, you're going to have 2 years to get that out, which was going to cause a lot of inventory to hit the market and could help prices for other investors. I don't know, I'm not into politics, so I don't know which way that's going to go, but it's definitely something to be watching. 88-1. Hi, Dion. How do you get to speak to seller directly when you and the seller are having the agents represent you? Because I have my listing agent send the email to the other agent and just ask to share the information with the seller. You do have a listing agent in the way that could be a barrier. And like I said, some of them think it's illegal for you to do seller financing. So you could just not get some deals. But my offer also includes the traditional lending route. So if the agent comes back and says we're not interested in seller financing, they might not have even checked with their seller, so it's possible. Uh, but here's what our response is to your actual offer. And sometimes you don't even get that. Sometimes listing agents don't answer. They get 50 offers, they got the one they accepted, they don't talk to 49 people or however many the numbers are. Inflation is here. Inflation sucks, especially for like I did a deal deep delve with it, and it'll be coming out pretty soon. A guy who's got 8 kids, and he's house hacking his way to financial freedom. He's got $5,000 a month in cash flow. He's doing great. But imagine having 8 kids and thinking, okay, I got to go buy diapers, and I got to go buy food, and I got to go buy all of the things that cost more. But he's buying properties with house hacking strategies. And inflation is your friend when you own appreciating cash flowing assets. So inflation is here, and yes, across the board it sucks. But we're seeing wage inflation, and wages set rents. So rents are going up. Here in the area where I'm at, we're seeing 20 to 40% rent increase. And in my case, most of those are at tenant request. I believe that came out of the Build Back Better bill. Yeah, it was. I think it was. They took it out of the Build Back Better bill. My serenity. Hit the like button, guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. That is greatly appreciated. I might share it with more people. Nathan, thank you for doing this. Happy to. Hopefully, the information helps, and hopefully, my brain doesn't shut off every now and then, and we just all stare at the screen for no reason whatsoever. Harry Hunter, nothing wrong with buying a fourplex to start with, but you need to have money, right? Your down payment's going to be more. Even 3.5% of a significant amount becomes a significant amount, and you want reserves. The more units you have, the more reserves you can have, because the more water heaters that can go out, the more expensive the roof is going to be to fix. I wish I could have started with fourplexes, and I wish every property I owned was a fourplex. The more units there are, it seems to cash flow better. I didn't have the money or the reserves to start that way, so I would have none if I was waiting to do a fourplex. So I started with duplexes. In hindsight, do you prefer to do conventional financing versus FHA? I've never used FHA. I used a 5% down conventional loan, and then since then all conventional over 20% because of the income snowball kicking in. FHA is designed for bad credit, so under 600, and not a great debt to income ratio. Earlier this year, it was up to 58%. Now it's in the 40s. So if you have bad credit and you have a high debt to income ratio, FHA is probably the best way to go. This is for single family. Conventional to me is always preferable. In the last couple of years, as lending fears went through the roof, conventional loans started wanting 15% down even for owner occupied, or even 20% down for owner occupied, depending on the lender you were working with. So it's really hard to save up 20% of a $600,000 fourplex. So I would consider FHA, and I have a friend who's buying a duplex. We've been working together to get her this duplex, and she's closing on it in any day now. She's using FHA because conventional would have been too big a down payment. So it's based on your situation. Harry Hunter. So that's where it is, but not law yet. Hopefully people realize how disastrous that would be for huge projects. And the problem with removing it from IRAs is there are a lot of, if it starts to go that way across the board, there are pension funds that invest in real estate. And if you take that out of retirement account possible, options, you can have entire pensions that lose most of their returns. So it's not just the individual that can be hurt with that. Dawn, I'm glad to get to learn from you while you are scaling and don't yet have the units that Matt and Michael do. Well, so there's a bit, I'm hoping that this is a thing, Dawn. Working at a truck driving school, it's kind of like Groundhog's Day. Every 3 weeks, every week at one of our campuses, a class is starting. And one of the things that instructors struggle with is it's really hard to remember what it's like to not know something. So we're always presenting the information every week to a new group of people who have never double clutched, who have never seen a simulator, who have never had to move their left hand and right, or left foot and right hand at the same time, and they don't get the spatial dynamics of backing from ground zero. So I'm hoping that as I scale, because I am scaling, I can continue to talk about the concepts that matter when we're starting out. Kind of like Graham Stephan, Meet Kevin. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, their content was here's how you reach financial independence, here's how investing works. And then one of them went off on stimulus and one of them went off on reacting to videos. But once in a while, they sneak in a video on 5 money concepts that mess you up in your 20s or something like that. And I'll watch that video 2 or 3 times to get those concepts because they're really good content creators and they have really good information. But as a YouTube channel grows, they start thinking, what does the most people want to watch? And I'm trying to stay in what does the average investor need to know? So it's on you guys every now and then to say, hey, that's the 3,000 foot view. Come back down here to what it's like to buy that first or next rental. And that's important to me because that's who I'm trying to help is that person in the first 5 years of investing to get their first couple of deals going, to get the snowball going. Because after that, so many options open up. One YouTube channel can't provide enough information for that because you have so many options. Rob, why coded locks out of curiosity? My units are all in Class C neighborhoods, and the tenants are kind of shocked that they don't have to have keys. They all love it. I have very low tenant turnover, so it's one of the things for that. But I don't have a box of keys somewhere that says, what door, what unit. I don't swap it out. I don't have to pay for key trade outs whenever a tenant moves. I can send a handyman or a contractor to a property. I don't have to meet him there. I have a code for the handyman or contractor, and when I need to, I can go and swap that out. If I have a tenant turnover, it takes me maybe 5 minutes now. I mean, in the beginning, it took 10 because I'd have to pull up the YouTube video of what code tells me to do what. But I punch in a code, clear out all the codes, punch in the new codes, have the new codes for the next tenant. And I have behind the scenes secret squirrel information. This is my business book. This, hopefully it's not too visible from YouTube land, but each property in here, in this book, gets 10 pages. There's a picture with the rental history, the key that goes to the coded lock for that building, the current codes that are in that lock, when the refrigerator was replaced, when the flooring was done, the last time it was painted, the current tenants that are in that building, what the rents are, who holds the mortgage, who holds the insurance. So my entire business fits into one book, and I don't need to have a box of keys with one for each door and one for each tenant, one for each handyman, and one for all that. So coded locks are one of the things that help me simplify my business. I hope that answered that question. Larry, have you ever used the binder tactic more than once with the same tenant? Just did that. Yes. Literally got the text. All right, I should have text on here. Text the gentleman and I say, hey, are you available to meet this Saturday? He texts back, no, you're going to raise my rent. And then he laughed and he said, of course we can meet Saturday, because he knew I was going to be bringing a binder. We haven't talked for 2 years on rents. And so he looked and he was shocked at how much rents had gone up. And he said, and I said, what's fair? He said, what's fair? It was right where I wanted him to be. So he asked for the rent up. He was the one that only went up 200, which is fair. We haven't raised the rent in 2 years. So had we done a 5 or so percent increase to him, it would have been really close to that each year. So I'm happy. He's happy. We laughed about having to meet and raise the rent again. Anthony, would you foresee doing it? No, did exactly the same. I literally said, we did this once before. This is what I paid for the property. The only difference was, and this is actually the binder that I did it with him on, cover the address. So it had the price that I paid, which was $290,000. The current estimate price is $478,000. So I was able to say, the property's got up a lot in price, including, as well as the rents in the area have gone up. So with a new tenant, it would show, hey, look how much this costs. This is a big number. We're both shocked by this. But an existing tenant can also see, oh, this place is worth a lot of money. If I want to go buy one, that's what I'm going to be paying for something similar. And the rents have gone up. So that was a twist. Didn't show the purchase price only. It showed the purchase price and what its current inaccurate Redfin, Z estimate, whatever map picture you look at the front would be. Yeah, so that was a great question. I'm sorry, the chat moves and I lose it, so it'll take me a second to find it. Mel, how do you handle house next door has dumped furniture in front and backyard next to your rental? It has an absentee owner. You can call your municipality if it's within city limits. I do not and would not own any rentals in an HOA, so you can call the HOA if that was an option. You could move the stuff to the back of the property if it's an absentee owner. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, I guess that would be the one benefit to having an HOA, is there's somebody to complain to, but the negatives with an HOA far outweigh any positives that could come from it, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, probably call your county and see if they have any. Um, I'm not sure what they're called in your state. In Washington, it would be an RCW or a WAC, Revised Code of Washington or Washington. So there might be a rule on what you're allowed to have visible from the outside of your property. To figure out if there's a law enforcement way. You can also send a letter to the owner if you can find out who the absentee owner is. County records might have that. That's how people who own properties keep getting text messages of, hey, you want to sell your property? So there's got to be a way to find the owners of properties. Chester, I can't speak for everybody, but I suspect we all share this sentiment. Truly appreciate the thoughtfulness you've put into sharing your journey with us. I'm super happy to. I wish I found something like this when I was first starting out. Like my first little year and a half or so just sucked. And then when I found just the blog writing, the articles on Bigger Pockets, some small things made huge changes. So I'm hoping to make huge changes with at least somebody, if not two somebodies. Um, thank you. So elite clinical research. Ever had an appraiser come out to your property and the grass wasn't cut? No, and if they did, they didn't point it out. So maybe if I ever bought a place that looked. No, most of the sellers have them looking pretty good for the appraiser because they know they want it to appraise too. Not yet. Larry, I appreciate you going out of your comfy zone to conduct these live sessions with us. Now, like I said, I'm happy to. I apologize in advance for those times when I completely check out of the conversation and have to come back to it. Um, since you're aiming to do higher price deals with similar cash on cash return, do you think you'll pursue 1031 exchange to achieve that? No, I don't plan on selling. So I'm going to do a cash out refinance or take out a home equity line of credit. Every investor I talk to that talks about the property that they sold wishes they had it back. So I guess if I had a problem tenant property where the turnover was just really bad for whatever the dynamics was of that neighborhood, yeah, I might sell into a 1031. I don't have that. I have really low turnover. In 10 years, I've had 2 turnovers, so I don't have any problem properties to get rid of. I've thought about it, I guess. I've tossed around the numbers. What would it be like to sell a house and take the 1031 into something else, and then decided to do the refinance instead. Chester, curious on your take on this. Dion, I've heard on Bigger Pockets from David Green. Every burr must be a good flip, but not every flip needs to be a decent burr. Every burr must be a good flip. So it need to make sense if you were going to sell it. Maybe. Okay. One thing I really like about David Green is, so I've worked in law enforcement, and police officers know how to say some things. You have some RCW memorized, like, how a parent or teacher or guardian can physically discipline a child to the point of leaving temporary minor, some laws you can quote pretty good. He's articulate no matter what he's saying. Like, his mind is 3 sentences ahead of where he's talking. And to me, that's super impressive for somebody who's also working in law enforcement, not something you normally encounter. So I would say when he says this, it probably sounds like it really makes sense. And so I agree. I think a burr and a flip are kind of the same thing, except the burr has to be better than a flip because that refinance at the end of the burr is where a lot of people make a mistake. So hopefully I can get this mathematically correct. When you go to flip something and you want to sell it, there's a buyer. There's a human being making an offer saying, or a hedge fund saying, I want to buy that property for this price. So the appraiser says, there's a person making this offer. Look at the comps. If they're the same, surprisingly, appraisals come in very often at the asking price or at the offer price, right? How odd is that? When you go to do the burr, that refinance at the end, there is no human being saying, right now, in this moment in time, I want to buy this property. You don't have an in-hand offer to buy the property. So the appraisers will look at comps from 6 months ago. They look at history to figure out what that value of that property is. So a lot of people, when they first start out with the burr, they're estimating their ARV on what current comps are. And the appraiser is going to look at comps from 6 months ago. And in something like King County here in Washington, where Seattle saw 30% appreciation over the last year. So if we take that 6 months, 15% can make a huge difference in the price of what you're expecting your appraisal to come back at. So that's accurate that a burr has to be better than a flip, but a flip doesn't have to be as good as a burr because you're using current comps. So I think it makes total sense. And I don't know if I ever thought those and told those entire train of thoughts before, but okay. Um, PJ, possibly looking for your opinion on my current property. 31K purchase price and then the 30K in renovations. ARV is 130 conservative, could do 140. Rent would be around 900 a month. Keep or sell. I'm always keep guy, never sold anything. So flipping is to generate capital, but it's episodical like a job. You stop working, the money stops coming in. At some point, you want to start keeping the assets. So I guess it depends on what your savings rate is, how long you're looking between buying your properties. To me, in the beginning, it was a couple of years. It sped up over time. Be careful with that after repair value. Remember, they're going to use comps from 6 months ago, not comps from when the repair is going to be done. So that comes down to, what is your goal? Are you trying to generate capital, or are you trying to generate ongoing income from owning, appreciating, cash flowing assets that the principal is being paid down by the tenant? I would go the rent route, because unlike Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, their goal is to generate massive portfolios with a lot of cash flow and a lot of generational wealth. Mine was to make work optional. I wanted more money coming in than it cost me to live, and I'm at like over three times that now. And so I'm not looking to scale as fast. So I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to scale super fast, you do some flips to get the capital to buy more assets. Larry, how was your skills and experience as a police officer translate well with self-managing and tenants relations? Do you suggest speaking with local law enforcement to ask about activity in target neighborhoods? You can. One thing that's really cool about cops is they know the area. You get a call, you hear a call of another officer doing a traffic stop, you just kind of start working your way out in town, and you know where they're at. They'll know closed down sections, they'll know trouble sections. So if you have an officer you can talk to, always a good suggestion. Not while they're working. If it's possible, don't do it while they're on the job. I think my experience in law enforcement helped me because I'm comfortable going to a tenant's house to sign a lease. I like to see where they were living before they're going to live in my property. I don't recommend that a lot of people who are becoming investors randomly go to some stranger's house. Situational awareness, being armed, that kind of stuff. Meet in a public place, so you might lose that. I think I have really good de-escalation skills where I can talk somebody down from a situation. I think the binder strategy came from me knowing that people like to be talked to and negotiated with, instead of just presented like a lot of apartment complexes do, and they go, here's the new rent. So that's one of the reasons why tenant turnover is so high. So I've definitely used law enforcement training in my real estate investing. How do you pay yourself as an LLC? Do you use payroll, distributions, etc.? None of my properties are in an LLC. And until I need commercial lending or hard money or want partners, I will have none of my properties in an LLC. I have a long list of reasons why no LLC. I would have to Google other channels and figure out how you pay yourself if you own an LLC. There's several videos in the Bigger Pockets forum, realm, basically, where you can find that information. I'm not the guy to answer LLC questions on any reason why you would need one, unless you have partners are going to use hard money or commercial lending, because they'll require you to have an LLC, and an LLC can protect you from someone else's mistakes, which is why I would have them if I had partners. So Helping Hands wish I had a better answer. Sorry. Angel, which brand do you use for the keyless locks? I will pin a comment in this when it's over. I am an Amazon affiliate, so I might make a penny if you buy the lock there. But I'll link. I go to Home Depot, Lowe's, and Amazon, and I use these Schlag locks that are, and I wait for them to go on sale. They're about $109. I wait for them to go on sale for $89, and then I buy like 5 of them. I like the ones where you put in a code and it engages the lock, but the human has to turn it to push the deadbolt out and turn it to pull the deadbolt back. Those batteries last over 2 years. The locks where you put in a code and a little engine in there or mechanism pushes the lock out, those batteries last a couple of months. I like not having to deal with the batteries. I put it in the leases that once a year tenants will replace the batteries in the locks. And I always do 2 exterior doors because the odds of both batteries dying at the same time has never happened. So I've never had a tenant lockout. So imagine all the people who own properties who have had tenants lock themselves out. I've never had to deal with that. That was another reason why I do coded locks, to the question 20 minutes ago when somebody asked why, just curious why coded locks. So I'll pin that comment down below. If you click on the link, that'd be great. Helping hands. I can't do coded locks because I have security gate and a regular door. Okay. They make coded locks for all manner of the deadbolt, the regular door lock. There's a lot of people who use coded locks when they rent by the room. Each room has its own coded lock. So I wouldn't completely vote it out yet. Gil Cooper. Any recommendations for a VA loan product that will allow me to purchase land and build a multifamily all in one bundle? There's a version of the VA like FHA 203K loan. I would go to Matt, the mortgage guy. I just talked. He was the lender. I was talking with one of his associates today. Much better products, especially for VA loan, than I've heard from my other lenders that I've worked with. So if you can, Matt, the mortgage guy, has a YouTube channel. If you connect with him, he's probably the guy I would ask for that question. There's probably an option for that. Chester, I've seen an article on the different neighborhood classes. Yep, so this is the best for cash on cash return. Is that something you've done a video on? In case not, okay. So I should do a video on that. I usually have the Brandon Turner article written up that I link to somebody when they ask, what do you mean the different classes in neighborhood? He did a really good explanation. I should make a video. It'd be something that would be good. Because whenever I make a video, I do like 3 days worth of research and really just get into the details to make a 10-minute video so that everything's accurate and makes the most sense. And then I'd probably have a better verbal reason as to why I prefer Class C. Because right now my reason is Class D is a war zone. Can't feel safe going there and get the rent. Class A and B people might move to a Class C area if there's ever an economic downturn to save money, but hardly anybody's going to move to a Class D neighborhood. So in bad times, I will have more applicants for tenants. That's my main reason for saying with Class C neighborhoods. But a video on what the classes are, I am amenable to that. J.R. Villafane. What's another way to find deals aside from using a real estate investor? Local REI meetups to find wholesalers. People look for them on Zillow. Sometimes you can find them. Usually it's pretty dated information, though, depending on the area that you're in. In the Bigger Pockets boot camp that I'm a teaching assistant in, we have a whole week on sourcing deals, and there's a whole bunch of driving for dollars, drive around your neighborhood, look for places that don't look like they're taken care of, go to the want ads. I just showed that I'm a million years old. Go to Craigslist or apartments.com, look for places that are for rent, or look for yard sale signs that say this place is for rent. Contact the owner and say, hey, are you interested in selling? There's a bunch of ways to find deals other than using a real estate agent. All of my deals so far are from a real estate agent right from the MLS. So it depends on how much time you have to dedicate to finding those deals. That lets you be as creative as you want to be. Some people go to tax records and look for out-of-state owners and then try to contact them. Apparently, out-of-state owners might be more likely to sell, but that seems odd because so many people are investing out-of-state on purpose. Chester, upper end of Class C or lower end of Class B for cash-on-cash returns. That's pretty much where I'm at. I'm pretty much Class C, and I have one B minus. And I think the cash to return is about the same. The B minus is the paid off house. So that's not really fair because it doesn't have as much expenses. So it looks a lot better on paper. Alex, should I buy a less expensive rental first and live in an apartment to show rental income on my taxes sooner than buying a primary residence, high price, and then doing it again in a year? That is pretty much what I did. I moved into an apartment and rented out my house. It would be the same thing as moving into an apartment and buying a rental. Maybe you could just buy a duplex. In a lot of areas, people think that a duplex costs more because there's 2 units. That all of the duplexes I've looked at cost less than the single family houses in the same area. So that's not always true that they cost more. Or maybe you could buy a house with an ADU. but it's not your forever home. Maybe you live in it for a year to get the owner occupied financing. Buying an investment property can be a little bit more challenging because they're usually going to want more money down and you're going to get a little bit higher interest rate. So you have a ton of options there. Um, I would look into each one and figure out which one makes the most sense. Talk to a lender to see what you're qualified to do. That's usually where it starts. And so the order of operations for investing goes: learn how to save. You need to be able to save, because the more you have for down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, and reserves, the more options that open up for you. After that, you start to work on your credit score. So that's the second thing. Third thing is you talk to a lender to find out what your options are, because that helps you narrow down what you can do. If they look at you and they go, your debt to income is terrible, then you're going to have to probably do some kind of owner occupied with rental in it, get the rental income on your tax return. For my situation, it was different because I owned a house. I kept it through the divorce. So I was able to move into an apartment and rent the house out. I have heard of lenders accepting rental income from people who have rented out by the room, as long as you had a lease and and it could document the payments were made. So you have a couple of different options there. The sooner you can get rental income on your tax returns, the sooner your debt to income ratio will matter less to lenders. I ran out of character. You can definitely email me. I always put my email in the chat. Anybody that wants to can always reach out. Happy to help if I can. Helping hands. I'm with you on that. I hate HOA. Never own an HOA. Yeah, and to me, it's not so much that the HOA has a charge. It's the random assessments. If the HOA wants to replace the motion gate at the front and you think it was working fine, you're going to pay your portion of that. It can wipe you out really quick. Lisa, can I send you an email with 2 questions? Yes, I put my email in the chat down below. Mel, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. No, thank you. You guys are hanging out with me. I appreciate this too. We need marriage counseling. Did I miss something on there? If you want marriage counseling, I'm not the guy. If you want to know how to ruin marriages, I've done that a couple of times. Profit. I usually like to renovate my properties and go above and beyond. I figured if people are proud of where they live, yeah. So the nicer you can make it, the more attractive you make it to the larger group of people, the less likely you are to have tenant turnover. So I put in LVP flooring everywhere. I do paint. I do those kind of renovations. I haven't done countertops or cabinets or like a full bathroom remodel or anything. I have put in new subfloors and LVP in bathrooms. So I guess I have done some small renos. No, I don't think you're doing it wrong, especially if you look at the investment based on, how is it going to impact the rents and the tenant turnover. The least amount of tenant turnovers you can have can actually make more money than a higher rent can. Tenant turnover, the amount of time that place is empty, the cost for the repairs, advertising, the time to screen, to train a new tenant, because you have to set expectations. I think if you can do rehabs that help limit tenant turnover, I think it's totally worth your time. I don't think you're doing it wrong. Janet, hello from Torrance, California. Howdy. I am never going back to California. I could not wait to get out of there. Joined the Marine Corps to get out of the desert, and they put me in 29 Palms and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and everywhere was just dirt. Rafael, also, I would like to know your pitch on for sale by owner on seller's finance. This is the same. If it's for sale by owner, then it's easier because you're not going through the listing agent. You can actually basically, in the comments below is my seller's pitch for seller financing. I actually put it in the comments for this video. Copy, paste, and edit it to match your amount, your earnest money, your down payment, that kind of stuff. But basically everything I talked about in the seller's pitch is there. Knock it on. Howdy. Use a passage doorknob and then a deadbolt, but I have used the keyless lock and really like it. Cool. Janet, can you share loan options for duplex? Can you share loan process? Order of operations for getting a loan for me is to go to a major bank like Bank of America or Wells Fargo and get pre-approved because their screening criteria is the most standardized. Once I have a property under contract, then I'll check with my other lenders, which is Wells Fargo, Fairway, Guild Mortgage, and now Matt, the mortgage guy's team, to see if they can beat the bank's rates and fees. If they can, I'm fair. I go back to the bank and I say, this is what another lender has offered me in writing. Can you beat it? The first 3 mortgages, Wells Fargo kept my business. After that, Fairway kept my business. Now it looks like Matt, the mortgage guy, so far has beat the rates and fees on everything I've looked at. So I'm probably going to be going with them going forward. But I'm being transparent with them. I'm telling his team, when you give me your offer in writing, I'm going to check with my other lenders. They had confidence. They said, sure, do that. We've got better rates. And so, I mean, there wasn't even a moment's hesitation. So that helped me have confidence in them. Loan options for a duplex, and you can do commercial loan where you put it, you're going to buy it in an LLC, and basically that business is going to buy it. It would probably be considered asset-based lending. You can do non-QM loans. So there's a few different loan options that you can do where your credit score, your debt to income ratio, your work history don't matter. That's for a single family, not so much single family, but for 2 to 4 units, there are companies like that will do that. Certain lending. I've got a friend, Alex Chen, that works for certain lending that does that. 5 units or more, that's pretty much how it's always done. You're buying it in an LLC, you're using commercial lending. They generally don't have 30-year fixed rates. They have a 10 or 7-year loan reevaluation period where they look at the net operating income of the property to see if it's still generating enough money to make the loan a safe bet. If you're buying that duplex, you can use conventional, which just means you're buying it with a regular mortgage from the bank. If you own or occupy, your down payment can be, depending on the lender, and this is from in the past. So right now, most of them want 25 or 20% down if you're not going to live there. If you're going to live there, they want 15% down, and some lenders are starting to look at 10. They used to do 5. So it just depends on how high the lender sphere is. If you use an FHA loan, which is Federal Housing Authority loan, it's not first time home buyer. That's not what it means. It's Federal Housing Authority loans. You can do 3.5% down on single family, duplex, triplex, or fourplex. So that's 3.5% down. You'll have mortgage insurance. There's a couple extra hoops to jump through that makes it harder to get a seller to accept that sometimes. Listing agents don't like it because appraisals are a little more challenging because it has to be rent ready or live in ready. So there's a bunch of options there for the duplex. You can also use hard money and do a BRRRR, where you borrow the money to buy a place that wouldn't qualify for a conventional or FHA or VA loan. VA loan's an option if you're a veteran. With your hard money, you could buy the property, use money to fix it, and then once it's all fixed up at the end, you could try to take your money out with a conventional loan or an FHA loan then, and pay off the hard money and pay yourself back for the renovations. There are a bunch of loan options. Try the chat move again. Rodrigo. Hi, Dion. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Which app systems would you recommend for collecting rent? I have a video called How I Collect Rents, 3 Things to Consider. Cliff Notes version. First thing, makes it easy on the tenant. Second thing, leaves an electronic paper trail. Third thing, saves me a trip to the bank. I'm lazy. Don't have a lot of time working, raising kids, taking care of kids as adults now, which is sometimes harder than raising kids. Sorry if you're watching. I use anything that leaves an electronic paper trail. Zelle, Apple Pay, Cash App, Venmo, Google Pay, PayPal, ACH. I'll even take a check and then deposit it with the app. And some people get all up in arms and they say, oh no, Zelle and Venmo are going to start tracking and reporting your income to the IRS, which we should all be doing anyways. So what does that matter? So I collect with any of those. The thing to be careful of is, and this I got from Mindy Jensen and from my truck driving school because we've experienced this, never accept a check or any of those forms of payment for the first month's rent and your deposit. For that, you want a certified funds, like a cashier's check, something that the person can't take back. And you can call PayPal and say, I didn't mean to make this transaction, and get your money back. If you receive a check, they have up to 10 or 14 business days to call their bank and say, they've cashed the check, they have my money, I want to take it back. And they will take it back right out of your account. That's actually happened to our truck driving school. So don't take cash, don't take checks for security deposit or that. I would take certified funds. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Has the touchy-feely lumberjack convinced you of the error of your comments? No, he hasn't. Helping Hands. How do you manage your rentals? Do you use online management company like Avail, Cozy? So I was using Cozy, but not to manage, just to list properties. Then Cozy was bought by apartments. I've used them once. It was a success. Had 12 applicants within 4 hours. So they advertised it well. It was easy to use. I got the credit report that I needed. I got the no eviction report. I got the work not verification, but information so I could verify it. So it was good. I don't use any systems. There are some really good ones. You can look into Hemlane, Stessa. There's some other ones you can use. Cozy, apartments now is probably great. This is how my management looks. So here's a clip that I should take out and make a video of. With 16 rental units, here's how my business structure looks. One checking account, one savings account, one credit card that I pay off daily, just used for cash back, one spreadsheet with a tab for expenses and a tab for income. I send the spreadsheet to a CPA and I sleep like a baby. In your area, you might be required to keep deposits in a separate account. They call it an interest-bearing savings account, which used to matter when we would get interest back, but now it's like 0.02 or 0.01. So I would have it, but it doesn't really matter. That's it. That's how I manage my business. You can make it as complicated as you want. You can make it as simple as you want. And for me, simple is better. The KISS principle, keep it simple. So there are some great programs out there. I would go for a free one if it was me. But for now, with only 16 units, and probably until I hit 40 or more, I would probably do everything the way that I'm doing it now. That spreadsheet does everything I need it to. There's my email, Helping Hands. How do you advertise your rentals? On apartments.com. I tried Facebook Marketplace and got banned for 6 months because I posted a rental on there. Somehow I got reported for something and they just said, no, you couldn't even log into Facebook Marketplace for 6 months. So that might be an option because people say they have good luck with it. I have not. You can use Craigslist. There's several ways to do it. I've had good luck with just going to apartments.com, create an account. You have to call to verify your account because they won't post it until they verify that you're a real person, not trying to scam. They need your contact info in case there is a scam out there. When I put my pictures on apartment.com, go to Canva, canva.com, and upload your pictures and put in a watermark that has your phone number or your email so that your pictures can't be taken out and put into somebody else's ad. Don't include the address in the listing. They get your address when they contact you. Just this is the house, this many rooms, this area for rent, because there are scammers who will put your address out there, and there are people who will fall for this story. No kidding, this is the full story. And this happened to a friend of mine who has an Airbnb property. Somebody finds an apartment for rent on Craigslist, and the owner says, I'm on vacation, so give me the deposit. You can rent starting the day you need it to. You're going to have to go to the house and change the locks because I'm on vacation. I'm not there to do that. Then they take the deposit. They don't own the property. It's your property. The tenant shows up at the house to change the locks, and you already have a tenant there. So put watermarks in your images to stop someone from taking it as easy, make it harder work for them, and don't include your address in the listing when you're setting up your rental. Shanier, thanks for Craigslist. JS, do you have a reference that shows legit charges for closing costs and approximate cost for each? I have several. I don't know how I would share them. But you get a closing document when you secure a loan that has all of the closing costs. Like a notary comes and watches you sign. That has a fee associated with it. How much was the appraiser? How much was the inspection? The inspection is more of a you bill, but the appraiser was paid by the lender, so that gets factored into closing costs. But there's a pretty good sheet you get from your lenders. If you email me, I will send you a redacted version of what that looks like. Just meaning I take out the address and my name and that kind of stuff. And my email was up in the chat. Cost. Dylan. Have you ever thought of doing short-term rentals, or what are your thoughts on them? I think they make a great amount of money, and I'm definitely going to try that. My friends who've done it have had great success. So far, I don't have any. I work full-time, and I like put a tenant in and never worry about the problems, connect them with the handyman for when there's a problem, literally until there's time to talk about the lease. I don't usually talk to tenants. I've got some I've texted twice in the last 12 months over something. But you can make 3 times the rent income on short-term rentals that you can on long-term generally. The expenses are twice as much. So you increase the amount you're going to make, but you increase the amount you're going to spend. There's still a big enough gap to justify the extra work. I currently have a triplex, which is a house and a duplex, and or a duplex and a house. I don't know which one's the ADU. If that house ever goes empty, that's going to be my first short-term rental. I'm not doing short-term rentals in my small multifamily unless I did them like if both sides of a duplex were empty, I might do that duplex short-term rentals. I don't want permanent or long-term tenants next to people in and out. Probably works just fine. I just don't want to do that. But my thoughts are they're great. If you're going to buy property where you know what the profit would be with a short-term rental, I wouldn't buy it unless it would still cash flow as a long-term rental because the HOA, the municipality, or the county, or some law or regulation might change and you can't do short-term rentals there because the hotel chains are fighting it. Communities are fighting it because people don't like people coming in and out because you can have a loud party with no responsibility, no responsible party. So I wouldn't buy it if it would only cash flow as a short-term rental, because then if you lose that ability and everyone knows in that area you can no longer do short-term rentals, it might even be hard to sell it because people would only buy it because it could cash flow. Dion, what's some contingencies you consider waiving so that you'll be the chat moved, be able to purchase the house faster? I do a larger earnest money. I would never waive the inspection because it's not so much the inspection that I care about, having an inspection. I want an inspection period. I want that time where I get to go and look at the property and see if the street's super loud, or is there a train trestle really close that shakes it, or the airport location, or loud neighbors, or whatever that I wouldn't know from Google Streets or Street View or the MLS listing. So I want that inspection period. I would only waive an appraisal clause if I had the money to cover the cost difference if appraisal came in low, because the lender's only going to loan up to the value of the appraisal. And I've never done that either. I've had good luck with the higher earnest money. I have shortened the inspection period from 10 days to 5 a couple of times, but inspectors are super busy, so I wouldn't do that now. Those are the things I would consider. Larry, how do you conduct property maintenance checkups? And while you're there, also review the property for damage. Is it in your lease agreement? So all the lease agreements have, in my state, 48 hours, 2 days, where you have to have access to, the tenants can't say no as long as you give 48 hours notice. I generally say, hey, I'm coming by with some new filters for the HVAC system. I'm going to swap it out and leave you some for the next time. That gives me a chance to walk through it. And while I'm there, I'll say, hey, I need to check the sinks to make sure there's no leaks. That gets me everywhere that basically where there's a wet wall. And that gives you enough time to check for damage. I like to give plenty of notice to tenants so that they know that I'm coming. So if there is any damage, they usually take care of it by the time I get there. Yeah, it hasn't really been a problem. Just the HVAC filters, or just saying, hey, I need to come and do an inspection to make sure that there's no leaks. That's the thing that'll always let a tenant let you come in and get to the bathrooms, get to the sinks, get to the showers, because you want them to make sure that you're taking care of the place. More so than damage, I'm worried about things like loose banisters. So check for banisters, check for steps to make sure they're stable. You're looking for anything that can protect me, because if I show up at a tenant's house and there's a big hole in the drywall and they didn't complain to me about it, I don't care. I'll fix that when they move out. I mean, yeah, I'll probably fix it now if I notice it, but if they broke it and it's been 3 months, that's not my problem. That was their problem. They could have called me and told me. And yeah, that might have been a tenant charge, but I'm only worried about damage that would cause a safety issue. Lane, what's it? Spokane. Spokane is a good place. I've got a couple friends who invest there. So I might be driving through there this weekend. I'm driving some semis to Idaho. I haven't picked a route yet. I think we're going to go to Portland and then go across. So Timo Super, hi Ian. What is your approach to a long-term tenant in terms of raising rent? Raise rent and risk tenant move out, or keep tenant in at the end of the market? So On my channel, there is 2 videos. One is 5 minutes long. It's called My Secret to Raising Rent. There's one that's 21 minutes long called Tenant Request Rent Increase. Um, I recommend going and watching those. It literally is a way that the tenants ask you for the rent to go up. And I talked to it at the beginning of this, but you could watch this video from the beginning too if you came in a bit late. But in the last 2 weeks, I've used it 3 times, and all 3 times the tenants asked for the rent to go up. One was $310, one was $250, and the smallest one was $200. The tenants asked for that. So it's a strategy that it's called the binder strategy. That's the easiest way to find it on my channel. It's something I'm trying to share because it helps landlords. We get our rent up to where we can run a profitable business, have the money to repair things and handle things when they go wrong. But it also keeps tenants happy. After the tenants ask you to raise the rent $2, $3 more $100, they're happy. And so please go check that out. Kelly, close on your first duplex today. Awesome. Congratulations. Is it, you can put it down in there. Is it a house hack or is it an investment property? But that's cool. Congratulations. Yes, appreciate you giving details on how you manage properties. Thank you. Try to make it, I try to let people know that it takes 2 hours a month to manage 16 properties because I have systems in place. The easier you make it, the more your mind is going to want to add units. If it took a whole bunch of work to manage a tenant or a property, I wouldn't want to add more, or I'd want a property manager, which can, take more money. Property manager is a good way to go. I'm not saying it's a bad way to go. It's just not something I've done. Derek, couldn't tenants take back their money any month through Venmo? Yes, they can. But when you first place a tenant, that's your time to vet the tenants and test the tenants. They can take it back anytime with using a check, using a Venmo, using anything. So it'd be really hard to tell a tenant, I want a cashier's check every single month. But just when you're first doing it, that's the best way to get some money, because the real scammers out there are trying to figure out how to get in for free and live for free. You might weed them out going that way. That's why my tenant screening criteria is always credit score and no evictions. Somebody who's worked to get their credit score, and my minimum is 700. Anybody who's worked to get their credit score up that high will protect it. So I've never actually had a problem with that. But you're right. They can take it back anytime. Advertise all through Facebook. It works great. Have not been banned yet. So it's just something weird that happened with me. I don't know. It was actually kind of funny. And I didn't really care because I put it on apartments and I had to look at 12 people and figure out which one's the one I wanted to go with because all 12 were qualified. How do you do ACH without a management software? Do you have a merchant account? Nope. You just go into the banks. I've gone into the banks. They have a form for ACH and it just goes into my personal checking account. I have one tenant. I had to go to the tenant. The tenant had to come with me to the bank, or I would have had to use a notary. And the tenant fills it out at the bank signs off on it, and I get an ACH from that tenant every month in a regular checking account. Mine's Bank of America. Hers is Key Bank, I think it's called. So, yep. Chester, I think in one of the Three Amigos videos, there was a mention of possible first-time homebuyer credit the administration is thinking of. How realistically possible do you think that is? Well, they've happened in the past. I think the last one was like 8,000. This one is 15,000 across the board, 25,000 if you are economically disenfranchised. I think that's going to happen. I don't know that it's a good thing. It's just going to raise prices, especially if people can do a 3.5% down payment and you add 15,000 to it. That's a significant increase to how much they can borrow. You still have loan limits in place, so I guess that it wouldn't affect it too much. But depending on your area, those loan limits are pretty high. Okay, thanks. Realtors are asking for pre-approval letters before anything. I approached 2 lenders and they have to pull my credit as part of the pre-approval process. Won't this? Yeah, it'll lower it 6 to 10 points for a few months and then it'll go back. And when you have a lender pull your credit, you have a window of 30 days. I've heard some people say up to 60 days, but I would go a 30-day window where you can have lenders of the same type pull your credit as many times as you want and it doesn't hit your credit again. You get the one-time impact for those 30 days. So yes, you're going to take a little bit of a hit to your credit, but it's like 6 to 10 points and it's temporary. Dylan, you rock. Thanks for opinion on short terms. Thank you. Helping hands. Do you provide appliances? And if so, do you warranty them? Check in your area what you're required to. In Washington State, I provide a stove, a dishwasher, and a refrigerator. All my units have washer dryer hookups. I do not provide washer and dryers. I want the tenants to. If there's a tenant that I have that wants to come in but doesn't have a washer and dryer, I have a washer and a dryer that was left behind by a previous tenant that they are welcome to use. I don't maintain them. I don't replace them. They're responsible for replacing them if they die. And I've had tenants use them and then 3 months later got their own set. And then I take that and I put it back in my shed for storage. So I have it there for if that ever happens again. I don't provide microwaves. I don't know if there's other appliances. And I use, my refrigerators are like $800 from Lowe's or Home Depot. They're not super fancy. These are Class C neighborhoods. Yeah. So I do warranty, like if the refrigerator or the stove quits, I'll replace them. In my leases and in my conversations with tenants, it's a requirement that they have renter's insurance. If the refrigerator ever goes out and they lose $300 worth of food, that is a renter's insurance claim on their part. I let them know that is not my deal. If power goes out or if the fridge quits working, I will get it replaced. And because it's in my thing that I will replace it as soon as possible, because right now everybody knows it could be a 3-month wait to get an appliance because everybody was out of stock. So the more you can put in leases to cover that, the better. Thank you. Angel, message retracted. How do you do that? That's cool. What is Dion's daily driver? Aside from travel and trucks, are you into cars? Moment of transparency. 10 and 11 years ago, I was making $17 an hour. I was $89,000 in bad debt that I didn't know about until the divorce, and I was a single parent with 3 kids. At a minimum, I always had 3 cars because one of them had to run good enough to get me to work. Like, life sucked. Once the income snowball kicked in 2017, I got a brand new Corvette. Can't fit kids, but I enjoyed that for a couple of years. End of 2018, I now drive an F-250 pickup with literally on the back of the tailgate, capital block letters, the compensator, with every extra you can get: full sunroof, massaging heated cooled seats. It's the platinum edition, whatever the highest one is. Yes, I enjoy cars. I will always have a comfortable car going forward. I've had my time where I didn't. And for me, financial freedom is not about being frugal. The first couple of years is about being frugal until you get the income snowball coming in and you have those cash flowing assets producing money that you then use that money to buy your toys with. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I want a Tesla truck when they come out. That will be my next purchase if they are ever actually available. Kelly, duplex is a side-by-side, 2-bed, 2-bath investment. I like to move in and rent my house. Not really. And out of characters. No, well, if your boyfriend's not really on board, tell him it's not permanent, and look at how much it's going to affect you. I think it's brilliant to move in house hack and rent out your house too. And if it's 2-bedroom, 2-bath, I would look at the square foot. I have a 4-plex. All units are 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,236 square feet, 226, could be one of the two square feet. There's a 3rd bedroom in there. I just haven't added it to all of those units. And a 3rd bedroom can mean over $500 a month in rent. So I like the 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I have a lot of duplexes that are 2-bedroom, 1-bath that don't have the room for another bedroom. Derek, thanks. Knock it on. I definitely recommend the binder strategy. I used a short version of the strategy that raised rents over 35%. Yeah, it's crazy. And the tenants are happy. That's awesome. Helping Hands. We did short term in Big Bear, California, and it was awesome. It takes a lot of time if you self-manage. I sold 1031 into 4 single family houses. Great. I used to go to Big Bear. I lived out in Palmdale, and I would go to Big Bear as a kid. Long time before short-term rentals were a thing, and you would go through an agency to rent like a cabin for a period of time. How old are you? Ancient. What am I? 51? Jimena, howdy. All right. How much do you locate? How much do location does location play in acquisition? Would you buy a very old property in a big city or a fairly new property in a small town? Location means a lot. I like to have at least two economic drivers. So a small town I would probably stay away from. I have a house that's in a town called McKenna that I don't even think has a municipality. It's so small, but it's on the edge of a military base and it's kind of rural. So people who are in the military that are from larger states like Texas or from that are used to not living in the city because you have the base on one side you have Tacoma and on the other side you have this rural area. I'll never have a tenant shortage there as long as the base is there. If the base goes away, that one's going to be in trouble. But I make sure that my portfolio is spread around to where one property in that small area where it's reliant upon the base, and they don't even have military tenants in there. There's just enough competition for rentals that the rents are good enough even with that. But my other properties are by the port, by the state capital, by Boeing, so they're all spread out with multiple economic drivers to where 5 or 6 major things would have to happen for my whole portfolio to be impacted. So depending on what the rest of the portfolio looks like, I might consider a smaller town if there was, at least one. I want 2 economic drivers there though, if possible. I have a 1929 house, which in Washington State is pretty old. I know that Matt, the lumberjack landlord in his Boston area, that's probably the median age, but the rest of my properties are all 80 to 90 in that range, 1980 to 1990. Andrew, and then the chat moved. Information, rental pun of the day. I tried renting a bounce house yesterday. The cost was twice as much as last year. That's inflation for you. You are the pun master. You could do better than that. Everybody at work wants to hit you because of your puns. So that means they're good. Larry, PJ, how was your tenant agreement changed since your first property? What add-ons or modifications helped you as a lazy autopilot landlord? First tenant was a handshake with no lease. That's the biggest change. That was one of the least intelligent things I've ever done, and I got exactly what I deserved out of that. I got my lease from the Washington State Landlord Tenant Resources page, which I haven't seen it posted on since, and now I have access to Bigger Pockets Pro, so I would get their leases. They have leases for each state there, and they're really good. I had to add a no water beds clause. That was a lesson learned. I put in writing the portion of the yard that the tenants take care of, like with a diagram of this is the section you will mow, this is the flower beds that are your responsibility. Be really specific, especially with small multifamily. The more expectations you set in the beginning, the easier it is to be lazy later on, because you can literally just say, hey, it's in writing, you said it right here. So that's got more dialed in over the years too. Add-ons is a plumbing addendum that if a plumber comes out to clear a clog, if it's a pipe break or a mechanical malfunction, it's my bill. If it's a clog caused by anything the tenant did, like flushable wipes, literally spell out flushable wipes so that they know that that's not a good thing to use, then the tenants are going to pay the plumber fee. Chester, I found it. You can remove your own comment, and I think that's where the message tracking. Yep, cool. Yep, nice. Dylan, what does your lease look like? Do you have a lawyer write it up? So I just covered that. I got the one from check your state. Your state might have a landlord tenant resource page, and that leases would be on there. Bigger Pockets has options. I don't mind sharing mine. If somebody emails me, I'll send it, but mine's a generic one for Washington State. So it probably doesn't have laws that are specific to where you live unless you live in Washington State. And there might be a reason why Washington pulled it off of their resource page. It's been working for me. I haven't had any issues, but as with every YouTube content creator, we have to say, this is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not giving advice or in professional or whatever. So if you use that lease and you run into problems, don't sue me, bro. Angel, you have 2 duplexes, 4 units total. Cash flow after savings expenses is $1,600. Your car keeps breaking down. I've considered financing new, but I want that. It's the wise thing to do. That's why I asked. Yeah. If I all of a sudden needed a car, I would get a 2 or 3 year old F-150, especially with rentals. You can haul your appliances if you need to. It's pretty much the number one owned car in millionaires in the United States. They're reliable. The 2 or 3 year old margin, you're still enough under warranty to where you won't have issues, and the price adjustment is usually just right. Although with the chip problem that's going on, I might check prices before I commit it to that, because that's been my plan up until this year. If it was just functionality for vehicle. If I had 2 duplexes and didn't have the cash flow, I probably wouldn't have gone for the Corvette, and I probably wouldn't go for the F-250, like, with everything that it's got. I think the tires and rims on that thing cost more than every vehicle I've owned before the Corvette. What's 1031 and how does it work? That is a great question. 1031 is to delay a tax obligation that you incur when you sell an asset. So if you sell an asset, you have what is called capital gain. So if you've owned it for more than a year, you're not going to pay income like you earned the income. You're going to pay taxes as a capital gains tax. You can sell an asset and purchase another asset of the same type. So if it's a rental property, you have to buy a rental property. I believe if it's a business, you have to buy a business. If you sell stocks, you have to buy stocks. Don't ask, I can't confirm the stocks thing because I'm not a stocks guy, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I know real estate. If you sell a property, you can buy another property and delay the taxes. So if you were going to make $300,000 in profit, you buy the new property. That $300,000 in profit is counted as profit in that property. So if you ever sell that, then you have to pay capital gains on that profit on top of whatever that property gains. So it doesn't stop you from paying taxes, it delays it. You can do 1031 exchanges all the way till the point when you die, and then your kids can get the properties through what's called the stepped up tax system, which resets the depreciation schedule back to zero. And they might not ever pay taxes on that. I think the limit was usually up to $5 million in property that way. And there was recently talk of people getting rid of the stepped up tax system and attacking the 1031 exchange over a certain amount. And a lot of people said, well, that only affects the rich people. Well, the way houses are appreciating now, pretty much everybody could hit that 1031 exchange limit. So they didn't go away, and hopefully they won't go away in the future. So it's a strategy you can use while it exists, but it could disappear in the future. A couple of rules with the 1031 is when you sell the property, you start a timeline where you have 45 days to identify 3 properties, and then you have 120 days to close on one of them, and then those numbers might be even shorter than that. The new value of the asset has to be greater than the asset that you sold, which means if you sell a house, you can buy another house that costs more. If you sell a house, you can buy 2 houses that cost less, but put them together and they cost more, or 3 houses, or however many assets it takes to spend more than what you profited when you sold. 1031 is generally used when you're selling an asset that is a rental. If you live in the property, there's an IRS 121 rule where you can realize up to $250,000 in gains and not pay taxes on it if you're single. If you're a married person, 2 people, it adds together to where you can realize up to $500,000 in capital gains and not pay taxes on it. This is actually a strategy that Mindy Jensen from Bigger Pockets uses. She does what's called a live-in flip. So she moves into a house that needs a lot of work. She lives there for a couple of years while they fix everything all up, super fancy, and then they sell it and can realize up to $500,000 in gains tax-free. Brilliant strategy. Jones, you're 25. I was up last week. Cool. I'd never had, I think I made it to 40 without ever having $1,000 in the bank. So this is not something that depends on your age. It's when we wake up one day and we realize, if I look at my money different, I can start buying assets that give me money instead of buying things that cost me money. So 25 is a good age to be. I started when I was 40. By 48, I made work completely optional. That was in 2018. So for the last 3 years, I've worked my job because I love it, not because I need it. And that makes work way more interesting when you're there because you want to be. And 5 years to get rich. Wish me luck. I wish you luck. Maryland has no available multifamilies. So multifamilies, small multifamilies hardly ever make it to Redfin and Zillow. When they come on the MLS and I find them, I want my offer submitted within 20 minutes. I get a hold of my agent, which when it's a deal I'm excited about, that's a text, a phone call, and an email, and then a phone call and a phone call and a phone call until they pick up and they make the offer. Same thing with my lender. I talk to my lenders and I tell them, you got about 20 minutes to get my letter of pre-approval ready to submit with my offer. If not, I'm going to the next lender. And the reason is speed is your friend. You can't assume you know anything about what the seller's thinking. They could not be sure they're going to get as much as they're going to list it for because they bought it for 200,000 and they're listing it for 6. Why, who's going to pay 6? Oh my god, somebody made an offer, take it quick. So if you're the first offer in, you get accepted. Then the seller has the sunk cost theory. So even if they get higher offers in later, they're committed to your offer, which has been accepted contractually. So Redfin and Zillow get the data much later. And so here's to steal a page from Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. If you set aside 4 hours on a Saturday to look at deals, you missed everything that came out on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and was sold on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So look every day for 15 or 20 minutes. Don't look for several hours on one day of the week because just like looking on Redfin and Zillow, you're seeing dated material that was on and off before it would ever even make it to Zillow. So what you'll usually find on Redfin and Zillow, if you do find anything, is it's already pending or it's already sold. So I would get auto searches set up with real estate agents so you can look on the MLS for those deals. And if you're in an area where it's hard to find small multifamily, here is a cheat code for you. Have your search include houses with an ADU. It's called an auxiliary dwelling unit. 2 houses, 1 property. It could be a granny flat, a mother-in-law house. You eliminate home buyers because home buyers aren't looking to buy something with tenants. And you eliminate most investors because their search says small multifamily. But a house with an ADU is not small multifamily. The numbers work just like a duplex. It's 2 rentals on 1 property. But that is a single family house. And the really good benefit to it is that even though there's 2 units, a duplex conventional loan might be 15, 20, or 25% down. A single family house with an ADU is 5% down conventional, 3% if you've never owned a property in the last 3 years, or FHA is an option too. So I would be searching on the MLS and I would look for houses with ADUs on top of looking for small multifamily. Hopefully that helps. Um, and I lost where I was. Okay, Chester. Curious about any math you do to determine whether a house with a certain square footage and listed beds, baths has the potential for an additional bedroom. Yeah, not really a hard and true rule though, because it could also be the layout of the place. Like my fourplex with the 1,200 square feet with the 2 bedroom, 2 bath. I'm looking to figure out where I would put that bedroom. I'm either going to eliminate a dining room or part of a living room, so it's not set up perfectly. If it's over 1,000 square feet and it only has 2 bedrooms and there's more than 1,000, you can start thinking there might be a third bedroom there. Look for things like family room or den. Those are from the 70s. Those don't exist anymore. People don't hang out with their family. You add an extra bedroom, you increase value. A home buyer might want a den or a family room, but a renter, most of the renters I've ever met in my entire life have no idea what square footage is. They wouldn't even know. Investors and people who think of the size of the property start looking at that, but renters don't. They go, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms? How many kids do I have? How many times do I have to share the bathroom? How many bedrooms can I actually sleep people there? So bedroom count is everything when it comes to renting, more so than square footage. Chester, for example, 3,316. Could that be bumped to a 3? Yeah, I would at 1,600 square feet. You probably have a fourth bedroom in there. Yeah. The fourth bathroom is a challenge because you have to change your wet wall and figure out where you could support that. Easier to add a bedroom, in my opinion, than adding a bathroom. Cheaper, too. Plumbing wipes, yeah. Andrew, hey Dion, did you see the Bigger Pockets 527? Blew my mind. So that was the Pace Morby one, yeah. And if you like his content, his wife is on One Rental at a Time every Sunday. They do 3 videos together. That's same great info. Yeah. Chester, basically, it's internal revenue code provision allows you to purchase a like kind property and allows you to defer the taxes indefinitely. Yeah, indefinitely, as long as you keep selling into a new asset. If you ever sell that asset and just take the gains, now you're going to have what's called depreciation recapture. And that's when the 1031 recapture would be in there as well. I'm gonna maybe make a video about talking about your views and plans on inheritance sometime. I sent hopefully he's not on still. I sent my son a meme the other day of was it Magic Johnson and his kids saying, "We're not rich, I'm rich." They didn't play baseball or basketball or whatever. I sent that to my son just because it was funny. So I anticipate my son because he can hyper focus on things, freaking out over this now for a week. Um, yes, I should do because at some point when your properties get to a point, a trust makes sense. Well, I'm not going to use an LLC unless I have partners, hard money, or commercial loans. I'm going to put my properties in a trust so that my kids can inherit them without a large tax impact. But if my property value is approaching the $5 million mark, so I would be in the point where the stepped up tax system might not be as effective. So that's why I want to use the trust. And here's the agreement that I have with all my kids. Each kid gets one third of what I own as long as they don't spend one penny on their mothers. If they spend a penny on their mothers, they lose everything and it goes to the other two kids. So, um, too much of an overshare. Uh, Chester, section 1031. Yeah. Million. Do you have more than a year lease with tenant requested? Yes. And check your local area because in Washington state, in order to have a lease longer than a year, the tenant has to sign it in front of a notary. They have to have it notarized if it's more than a year. I try to get 2-year leases so that I don't have to deal with the tenant re-sign or replacement next year. The longer I can have the leases, for me, the better. Um, Dylan, can you discuss asset-based lending? I think you said you had a retirement account to receive lending on, but you the normal taxable preference. So I didn't know. I emptied out my tax account. You can take out a loan against assets. And when I mentioned asset-based lending earlier, there are lending institutions that will lend against the income that the property is going to generate so that it doesn't look at your income, debt to income ratio, work history. But you can borrow against a retirement account, based on the value. You can borrow against a paid off car. Like any asset that you own, you can talk to lenders and borrow against that to come up with money for down payments. The problem with that is as you borrow money against any asset, that loan payment impacts your debt to income ratio. So if you're borrowing against an asset to come up with down payment, and then you're going to borrow from a lender to pay all of those loans, those sources of those funds are in your debt to income ratio. So it still has to be acceptable to the lender at the end. Johnzo, I've been buying stocks since I got to America. Robinhood is at 33K and 2K cash. Pick your asset class. To me, what really matters is that you invest in something that excites you because we're more likely to stick to a plan if we're emotionally invested in it. So if stocks excite you, great. If somebody gave me stocks, I would sell them, buy real estate. If somebody gave me crypto, I would sell it and buy real estate. Um, I emptied out my retirement accounts and bought a triplex. Knock it on. I'm not bitter at all. Not at all. No. Um, my ex-wives are great. They gave me 3 great children, and it takes 2 people to screw up a marriage. I'm one of the people. I'm fully aware. So I'm sarcastic, and I wish them the best. And my dad said things, and most of the time I make fun of them, and I love you, Dad, and I'll see you someday. But he said the best revenge is to have a good life. And I think I'm having a great life. And reaching financial freedom was the first step to having a great life for me. So, best revenge, have a good life. I think we are done with the questions for tonight. And unless I'll give another minute for if anybody wants to pop any out, I want to say thanks for hanging out tonight. These were great questions. I hope my information helps somebody, maybe 2 somebodies. And let me see what we got here. I put into our retirement plan at my company up to the match to get the free money, and even that bothers me. I don't have any money in stocks outside of that, and that money being locked away for years is an irritant. The tax benefits of delaying taxes with a retirement account, I actually have a video on my channel called No Retirement Accounts. If I could take money and put it into a property, and it gets me a 10% cash on cash return now to spend, save, or invest, gains me appreciation 4 times what I invested because I'm using leverage. Principal pay down, the tenants pay down the loan. And with tax benefits, in 10 years, I have not paid 1 penny in income tax on rental profit. And last year it was 103,000, a little over $103,000. 0 tax obligation. That's way better benefits than locking money into a deferred tax account, hoping that taxes are less in the future and hoping that I retire broke. So if you have no investing strategy and you don't put money to work in real estate or in something that produces money, have a retirement account. It's better than nothing. But if you can buy cash flowing assets that appreciate and have the tax benefits, uh, at some point, I might even stop putting money into my retirement account to even get the match, but not today, because today I still see that that matched amount of money is a benefit. I'll probably pull it out someday and pay the 10% penalty, because even if I pay a 10% penalty, that just means 1 year of a 10% return to get that money back. And all of my properties so far start with a 10% return and then go up from there. So, well, thank you. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot. Let me go. Yeah, I'll put it, it'll be a pinned comment, the schlag lock with the code. And if anybody clicks on that, I appreciate it because I like the pennies. Right down. Thank you. I can do solo 401k if you haven't already. You can still put in real estate, even land. Yeah. So that's, those retirement accounts are what's under attack though for investing in real estate. And yeah, but for most people, I do recommend, if you don't have a good investing strategy, have a retirement account. Until my next after hours video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.